Hello, my name is Egon Cholakian. I am the harbinger of the apocalypse. At least that's what Russian journalists have called me for speaking the truth about the threat posed by the Siberian magnetic plume, and about what awaits us all, especially Russians. Well, since I've been appointed the harbinger of the apocalypse, I'll be fulfilling my mission. Listen up, people living in these final days, because the time has come. Why do I say the time has come? Because we, along with the participants of the Allatra movement, waited 10 years to reveal the truth about yet another planetary threat. Even back then, we understood the full scale of the catastrophe, but we couldn't talk about it. We waited until the critical mass of scientific research from scientists around the world had been accumulated. Some of the research we initiated ourselves, but we had to wait until people began to recognize this threat. We couldn't rely solely on our own work because then we wouldn't have been heard. What threat am I talking about now? What if I told you that all your illnesses today, ranging from depression to cancer, from chronic fatigue to infertility, share a common cause or, at the very least, are exacerbated by the same factor? That factor is micro and nanoplastics. They are already everywhere, in the air, in the water, in our food, within you, and within your children. And they do not merely pollute. They are dismantling us from within, at the level of our cells and DNA. Today, I will show you just how deeply we are entangled in this crisis and why this threat rivals the Siberian plume in its catastrophic consequences for humanity. The time has come to look this enemy in the eye and grasp the true scale of its danger. What are micro and nanoplastics, and why are they everywhere? Microplastics are plastic fragments smaller than 5 millimeters, while nanoplastics measure less than 1 micrometer. These particles are invisible to the naked eye, yet they retain their polymer structure and contain toxic additives such as phthalates and bisphenols, and over 16,000 other chemicals, more than 4,200 of which are persistent and accumulate in living organisms. Where do these particles come from? Micro and nanoplastics form as the plastics we manufacture degrade under the influence of sunlight, water, wind, and time. Processes such as weathering, physical, chemical, and biological degradation, as well as combustion, release billions of micro and nanoplastic particles into the environment. Their sources are diverse, from plastic bottles to textiles and tires, from macroplastic waste in the oceans to microfibers, which alone constitute 91% of the plastic found in the water. Each year, over 400 million metric tons of plastic waste are produced globally, and projections indicate that by 2040, this figure will have tripled. However, I state with complete certainty that this will not happen for the very reason of plastic itself. And soon you will understand why I make this assertion with such confidence. Plastic takes 500 to 1,000 years to degrade, never entirely disappearing, but instead breaking down into micro and nanoplastics. The Environmental Protection Agency of the United States has stated that merely 100% of all plastic ever created by humanity still exists today, just in a different form. And I will add that it will persist for thousands more years. Plastic waste has turned our planet into a vast experiment where plastic has become embedded in the very fabric of nature itself. Micro and nanoplastics are not just pollutants, they are catalysts of a triple planetary crisis. They accelerate natural cataclysms, contribute to biodiversity loss, and drive environmental contamination. Do you know that micro and nanoplastics contribute to abnormal precipitation patterns? In the atmosphere, microplastics act as ice nucleation particles, altering cloud structures. Research indicates that water droplets containing microplastics freeze at temperatures 5 to 10 degrees higher than those without, leading to less frequent but significantly more intense precipitation events. Low-dense clouds contain higher concentrations of microplastics, while hydrophilic polymers accelerate their formation, further intensifying natural disasters. Scientists emphasize this process affects precipitation patterns, weather forecasting, climate modeling, and even flight safety. Particularly alarming is the impact of plastic pollution on the planet's thermal balance in the context of intensifying geodynamic activity. Historically, the ocean has played a crucial role in regulating global temperatures by absorbing and redistributing excess heat from the Earth's interior. However, micro and nanoplastic contamination is critically impairing this function. Rising magma is the primary driver of oceanic heating. It exerts a powerful influence on the oceanic crust, which is thinner and more vulnerable than the continental crust. As plastic waste degrades into micro and nanoparticles, the thermal conductivity of seawater decreases, obstructing the dissipation of excess heat from the Earth's interior through the ocean. This leads to the accumulation of excess energy within the planet's depths, resulting in an increase in deep focus earthquakes and the rapid formation of new magma plumes. In turn, these processes further destabilize the planet and accelerate oceanic warming. A dangerous feedback loop is emerging. Geodynamic activity heats the ocean. Warming accelerates plastic degradation. Rising microplastic concentrations reduce water's thermal conductivity. Heat dissipation from the Earth's interior is disrupted. Geodynamic activity and earthquake frequency intensify. The ocean heats up even more, further accelerating plastic breakdown into micro and nanoparticles. This cycle contributes to the growing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events and natural disasters, floods, hurricanes, and tropical cyclones that we are witnessing now more than ever before. Now stop and consider this. We have created a monster that not only surrounds us, but has already infiltrated our bodies. While plastic alters the climate, warms the oceans, and influences geodynamic activity, it has silently become a part of our very flesh. What was once an external threat has transformed into an invisible invader, killing us from within. How did this happen? Let's take a closer look at what is unfolding inside our bodies. Nanoplastics have infiltrated every corner of our bodies, from the bloodstream to the brain, from the intestines to the placenta. And the most alarming reality, they are nearly impossible to expel. Once inside, these microscopic particles penetrate the deepest structures of our organs, tissues, and cells, embedding themselves permanently and accumulating day after day. Unlike many other toxins that the body can filter and eliminate, nanoplastics are simply too small, invisible to the naked eye and minuscule enough to bypass all protective barriers. They initiate destruction from within, at the most fundamental level, the cellular level. It is an assiduous poison, one that silently dismantles the very mechanisms that sustain life, triggering diseases for which there is no remedy. That is why we must begin our discussion at the cellular level, because it is here that a chain reaction is set in motion, ultimately leading to severe illnesses and, in many cases, fatal outcomes. Imagine that every cell in your body is like a miniature factory, producing the energy needed for you to live, move, and breathe. This energy is generated within tiny power stations called mitochondria. Nanoplastics infiltrate these mitochondria and disrupt their function. As a result, cells lose their ability to produce energy, referred to often as endosine triphosphate, or ATP. Harmful substances, reactive oxygen species, accumulate in excess. Cells begin to suffocate from energy deprivation. It is critical to understand that ATP is not just another biochemical compound. It is the body's universal energy currency, fueling every essential function. Membrane transport, hormone synthesis, including testosterone and cortisol, DNA replication, muscle contractions, and nerve signal transmission. Envision, if you will, a vast city powered by countless electrical power stations. Now imagine those stations suddenly shutting down. First the lights go out, vision deteriorates. Then the elevators stop, muscles weaken. Communication systems fail, nerve signal transmission is disrupted. Security systems shut down, immune function collapses, and gradually the entire city descends into chaos. When nanoplastics destroy mitochondria and halt ATP production, it is the biological equivalent of a citywide blackout. Without ATP, cells can no longer maintain membrane integrity, synthesize vital compounds, relay signals, or defend against external threats such as viruses and infections. This is not a singular issue. It is a catastrophic failure, triggering a cascade of destructive processes that ultimately lead to cell death, tissue degeneration, and eventually organ failure. Our cells flicker out like dying light bulbs, and with them we lose our health. This is why nanoplastics are not merely pollutants. They are biological time bombs, targeting the very foundation of our existence. Nanoplastics penetrate even deeper into our very DNA, acting as a toxin that generates harmful compounds. They damage DNA strands and induce genetic mutations, some of which can be passed on to future generations. This leads to various forms of cancer as cells begin to grow uncontrollably. It accelerates tissue aging and triggers genetic abnormalities that persist across generations. What is especially alarming is that nanoplastics remain inside cells even as they divide, transferring the daughter cells. This means that when cancer cells replicate, plastic enhances their migration and promotes metastasis, making the disease even more aggressive. Our cells are encased in a protective membrane, a kind of defensive wall. Nanoplastics act as a cellular saboteur, breaking down those protective barriers. They provoke severe inflammation and cause premature cell death. This contributes to diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, where joints become painful and erode, and inflammatory bowel disease, where digestion turns into a constant source of suffering. Studies show that patients with inflammatory bowel disease have significantly higher concentrations of microplastics in their bodies. The immune system, unable to recognize the true enemy, wages war against itself, attacking its own tissues damaged by nanoplastics. The most distressing consequence of this process is the accelerated aging of the entire body at the cellular level. The biological age of tissues begins to far exceed chronological age, manifesting in the early onset of age-related diseases and a general decline in systemic vitality. In essence, nanoplastics are rewriting the script of human aging, one that is faster, harsher, and far more devastating than we have yet come to fully comprehend. Nanoplastics bypass all biological barriers and infiltrate the body's most vital organs. They accumulate in arterial plaques, increasing the risk of rupture. In the brain, they trigger inflammation and disrupt neural function. They destroy synaptic connections and induce neural inflammation. Shocking scientific discoveries reveal that patients with carotid artery stenosis have significantly higher concentrations of microplastics in their blood compared to healthy individuals. Researchers have detected high levels of plastic derived from industrial materials used in pipes, windows, car interiors, and clothing, circulating in the bloodstream of those affected. Microplastics are not merely present in the brain. They deeply infiltrate brain tissue, breaching the blood-brain barrier, which typically shields us from viruses and bacteria. Once inside, nanoplastics cause chronic inflammation, severely disrupting neural function by breaking down synaptic connections, the very highways along which signals travel in the brain. Moreover, nanoplastics interfere with the breakdown of beta amyloid, a protein linked to Alzheimer's disease, while also reducing levels of glial fibrillary acidic protein, a key marker associated with early stages of neurodegenerative diseases and depression. This leads to a surge in devastating conditions, including myocardial infarction and stroke. The risk of fatal stroke is 4.5 times higher in individuals with plastic buildup in their arteries. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Nanoplastics directly activate immune cells in the brain, exacerbating neural damage. Depression and anxiety disorders. Carotid and intracranial artery stenosis. And here is yet another staggering statistic. In the United States alone, phthalates, chemicals linked to plastics, are already responsible for an estimated 100,000 premature deaths annually among individuals aged 55 to 64, primarily due to cardiovascular disease. This figure exceeds the combined number of fatalities from car accidents and gun violence. And this is only the beginning of a global epidemic, a looming crisis of neurodegenerative diseases and cardiovascular catastrophes fueled by the omnipresence of nanoplastics in our lives. Microplastics infiltrate bone tissue, entering the skeletal system through the digestive tract. Due to their molecular structure, nanoplastic particles can mimic calcium and other essential minerals required for bone metabolism. In effect, the body mistakenly incorporates plastic into its skeletal framework, treating it as a building material for bones. Once embedded in bone tissue, these foreign particles severely disrupt normal metabolic processes. Over time, microplastics weaken bones, transforming once dense structures into porous, fragile frameworks. The consequences are devastating. Osteoporosis, abnormal decrease in bone density, develops faster and at an earlier age. Fracture risk skyrockets, even from minor trauma such as a wrist fracture from a simple fall, or vertebral compression fractures from lifting a modest weight. Healing slows dramatically. Bones that should mend within weeks take months to recover. This mechanism is particularly dangerous for older adults, whose natural bone regeneration is already diminished with age. For them, microplastics become a tipping point, irreversibly disrupting an already fragile balance of bone metabolism. The result is a surge in hip fractures and other age-related skeletal injuries, which not only drastically reduce quality of life, but significantly increase mortality rates among the elderly. Most alarming, however, is that this issue is no longer confined to older individuals. Bone fragility is now emerging as a growing crisis among middle-aged and even young adults, whose skeletal structures under normal physiological conditions should be at their peak of their strength. Nanoplastics strike at the very core of our existence, our ability to create life. It is critical to understand that nanoplastics are present even in sperm and egg cells. This means that conception itself occurs in the presence of nanoplastics, and the very first cell divisions of the zygote already take place with these microscopic particles embedded within. The female reproductive system is particularly vulnerable to nanoplastics and their associated chemicals. Phthalates, chemical compounds widely used to make plastics more flexible, have been scientifically proven to directly stimulate the growth of uterine fibroids. These same chemicals disrupt placental function, interfering with the production of key hormone essential for maintaining pregnancy and ensuring timely labor. Even more alarming is the nanoplastics' ability to breach the placental barrier, infiltrating the developing fetus and poisoning a child before birth. At the hormonal level, nanoplastics and phthalates act as endocrine disruptors, throwing off the delicate regulation of the menstrual cycle and ovulation. Research has revealed that in women, the primary targets of microplastic contamination are the ovaries and endometrium, two critical organs for reproduction. In the ovaries, microplastics suppress the viability and normal division of granulosa cells, the specialized cells that surround and nourish the developing egg. This disruption leads to abnormal follicle development and ovulation disorders. In the endometrium, the inner lining of the uterus, where the embryo must implant, microplastics trigger a cascade of pathological changes, including uterine fibrosis, excess growth of connective tissue, abnormal collagen deposits, dangerous thinning of the endometrial lining, impairing a cyclical changes necessary for successful embryo implantation. The medical consequences of this are devastating for women's health and fertility. Uterine fibroids, whose causal link to phthalates has been scientifically established, are becoming increasingly widespread. Consider this staggering statistic. In the United States alone, 56,600 cases of preterm births in 2018 were directly linked to phthalate exposure, resulting in billions of dollars in medical cost. Infertility, miscarriages, pregnancy complications, and implantation failures, once considered mysterious reproductive issues, are no longer enigmas. The culprit has been identified: microplastic contamination in women's bodies. Micro and nanoplastics directly lower testosterone levels, the key male hormone, while accumulating in the testes, damaging tissue, disrupting the spermatogenic environment, and impairing cardiovascular health, which is essential for normal erectile function. Shocking research findings have revealed 12 different types of microplastics detected in 23 distinct testicular tissues of men. Moreover, the higher the concentration of microplastics, the more pronounced the decline in sperm count. Experiments on mice confirm that the degree of harm correlates directly with microplastic exposure levels. This contamination leads to such problems as reduced sperm count and quality, impotence and erectile dysfunction, hormonal imbalance. More than 10,000 male deaths per year are partially linked to testosterone deficiency caused by phthalate exposure. And another alarming statistic: over the past 40 years, the global average sperm concentration in men has been steadily declining, a trend with profound implications for the future of human fertility. Within our intestines exists a vast microscopic world, trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that make up the gut microbiome, an ecosystem as complex as a tropical rainforest. This internal forest is critical to our health. It aids in digestion, synthesizes essential vitamins, and trains our immune system. But nanoplastics are systematically destroying it. Once in the gut, nanoplastics radically alter the composition of microbiome, killing beneficial bacteria while encouraging the proliferation of harmful pathogens. Even more dangerous, perhaps, nanoplastics physically damage the delicate protective layer of the intestinal barrier, the body's only line of defense between the gut's contents and the bloodstream. As a result, the immune system becomes hyperactivated, triggering chronic inflammation and forcing the entire body into a state of constant high alert against false threats. The consequences of this process affect millions of people, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, with unpredictable pain and digestive distress, allergic reactions to everyday foods, a weakened immune system making the body more vulnerable to infections. It is especially crucial to understand that the gut is more than just a digestive organ. Scientists refer to it as the second brain, due to its vast network of nerve cells and direct connection to the central nervous system. Damage to the microbiome sends distress signals to the brain via the gut-brain axis, impacting mood, cognitive function, and even triggering psychiatric disorders. Thus, when nanoplastics destroy the microbiome, it is not just the stomach that suffers, the entire body is under attack, including our mental health. Inside every cell of our body exists a highly sophisticated system responsible for continuously clearing out damaged components and toxins. However, nanoplastics critically disrupt this vital function. Once inside the cell, nanoplastics physically block detoxification processes, causing cellular waste normally disposed of through natural mechanisms to accumulate. This is particularly dangerous for nerve cells, where the buildup of abnormal proteins literally destroys neural fibers and their connections. Imagine an apartment where garbage hasn't been taken out for months. It's impossible to function properly in such an environment. This is precisely what happens inside our cells under the influence of nanoplastics. This cellular chaos contributes to the onset of severe neurological disorders, including Huntington's disease, where the brain gradually degenerates, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a devastating condition where a person slowly loses control over the body while remaining fully conscious. Additionally, the disruption of cellular housekeeping contributes to gut dysbiosis and digestive disorders, which through the gut-brain axis further impact the nervous system. Ultimately, these processes accelerate aging and trigger neurodegeneration, where nerve cells die faster than the body can replace them. In essence, our cells are drowning in their own waste, and this gradual breakdown erodes our ability to move, think clearly, and maintain control over our own bodies. The alarming connection between nanoplastics and mental health is becoming increasingly evident with each new study. Scientists have discovered that polystyrene microplastics trigger a complex biochemical process in the brain that directly induces anxiety-related behaviors. At the same time, phthalates severely disrupt hormonal balance, impacting mood and emotional stability. Even more concerning is that microplastics reduce levels of a critical brain protein, a deficiency of which is directly linked to the onset of depression. The consequences of this invisible assault are staggering. A 20% increase in depression among teenagers and young adults in recent years. A 76% surge in suicidal thoughts in just 7 years, from 2013 through 2014 to 2017 through 2020. A sharp rise in anxiety disorders, ADHD, and autism diagnoses. Perhaps the most disturbing trend is that this mental health crisis among young people coincides with the rise in nanoplastic exposure and its associated chemicals, substances that modern children are exposed to from the moment they are born. By now you understand that nanoplastics are not just pollutants. They are a hidden adversary that has already infiltrated us from within. They have penetrated every cell, from mitochondria, our internal power generators, to DNA, the very blueprint of our future. They do not leave, they accumulate, dismantling everything that makes us alive: our energy, our health, our minds, and even our ability to create life itself. This is a biological time bomb, one that detonates slowly but inevitably through diabetes, cancer, dementia, infertility, depression, brittle bones, and failing immune system. Nanoplastics attack the brain, the gut, and the heart, leaving us aging prematurely and sick without cause. And the worst part, we cannot stop them. As long as they remain inside us, every illness, every fear, every loss bears their mark. This is no coincidence. It is a pattern, one that we ourselves have set into motion. Let this sink in. Nanoplastics are rewriting our fate, and if we do not find a way out, they will be our undoing. Humanity has already crossed the plastic Rubicon. This invisible enemy is now embedded in our tissue, and its consequences are becoming an inevitable reality, a medical catastrophe happening right now, the full scope of which we are only beginning to comprehend. Children, especially those still in the womb, are the most defenseless group against the threat of nanoplastics. Scientific studies have confirmed what researchers feared most. Nanoplastic particles breach the placental barrier, a natural defense system designed to protect the developing fetus. Microscopic plastic particles physically infiltrate the placenta, directly affecting the unborn child during the most critical phase of development. Even more alarming, nanoplastics alter the composition of breast milk, compromising the essential nutrition and immune protection that newborns rely on for a healthy start in life. As we already know, the body's immune system recognizes microplastics as foreign invaders, triggering localized immune responses. Disrupting this delicate immune balance in early pregnancy leads to severe complications, including miscarriage, intrauterine growth restriction, preterm birth, stillbirth. One of the most disturbing scientific discoveries is that nanoplastics cause genetic alterations. These alterations not only harm an individual child, but potentially affect future generations, creating a snowball effect of inherited damage. One of the critical mechanisms of damage is the disruption of proper blood vessel formation in the fetus, leading to oxygen depredation in developing tissues and organs, especially the brain. This results in a wide range of severe health conditions, including autism spectrum disorders, respiratory diseases, low birth weight, preterm birth, cognitive development delays, and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD. In essence, we are unknowingly poisoning our own children before they even take their first breath. Due to the ability of nanoplastics to penetrate the placental barrier, triggering oxidative stress and inflammatory responses in embryonic tissues, they also disrupt the normal closure of the abdominal wall during early fetal development, equaling 4 to 8 weeks of pregnancy. These statistics paint a deeply troubling picture. The global prevalence of gastroschisis, a congenital defect in which the intestines protrude through the opening in the abdominal wall, has surged by 161% over the past 28 years, rising from 1.73 cases per 10,000 live births in 1990 to 4.53 in 2018. The most vulnerable group are infants born to young mothers under 20 years of age, where the rate soars to 10 to 15 cases per 10,000 births. At the same time, the incidence of hypospadias, a congenital condition in boys where the urethral opening is abnormally positioned, has also risen sharply. In the United States, cases of hypospadias increased by 20.66% between 1997 and 2024. In both conditions, the link to nanoplastics is undeniable. These particles either contain or transport endocrine disrupting chemicals, such as phthalates and bisphenol A, BPA, that interfere with hormonal balance and fetal development. Bisphenol A, BPA, which I have already mentioned, is one of the most widely used plastic components and a perilous threat to children. This molecule masquerades as estrogen, deceiving cellular receptors and interfering with critical developmental processes. A study by the Florey Institute of Neuroscience and Mental Health in Melbourne, Australia, found that boys whose mothers had high levels of BPA during pregnancy were 6 times more likely to develop autism by age 11. BPA suppresses a key enzyme essential for fetal brain development in males, explaining the staggering gender disparity in autism. For every girl diagnosed, there are 4 to 5 boys affected. Each year, 8 million metric tons of BPA are produced worldwide, making it omnipresent in everything from surface waters to breast milk. Nanoplastics have a devastating impact on the developing brain of a child. Research indicates that maternal exposure to nanoplastics leads to abnormal brain development in offspring, including histological brain defects and cognitive impairments. These disruptions manifest themselves as altered anxiety levels and behavioral changes, cognitive deficits, and increased vulnerability to neurological disorders. Nanoplastics functions as modulators of genes and epigenetics, causing DNA damage and alterations in gene expression. This may explain the rising prevalence of genetic disorders, such as Down syndrome, which has increased from 12.78 cases per 10,000 live births during the 1999 through 2001 period to 15.55 cases per 10,000 live births during 2016 through 2020 period, and trisomy 18, which has risen from 2.31 to 3.00 cases per 10,000 live births over the same period of time. Oxidative stress and inflammation induced by nanoplastics compromise genetic stability, heightening the risk of mutations in children. These effects manifest not only as congenital anomalies, but also as an increased lifetime predisposition to cancer and other serious diseases. Even more alarming is the rise in sudden infant deaths. The rate of sudden unexplained infant death, SUID, increased by approximately 12% between 2020 and 2022, from nearly 90 deaths to just over 100 deaths per 100,000 live births. This surge is particularly concerning because it follows 2 decades of relative stability in infant mortality rates. Older children are also at risk. An increasing number of sudden deaths during physical activity, and even at rest, has reached epidemic proportions, affecting children of all ages, from infants to teenagers. Think about this. Our children are not just victims. They are hostages to nanoplastics. We are not just poisoning them, we are programming chronic illnesses for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Right now, as you listen to me, nanoplastics are accumulating in your children's bodies. With every breath, every sip of water, and every plastic toy in their hands. They embed themselves in vital organs, destroy mitochondria, and cripple the cellular power generators essential for life itself. The surge in sudden child deaths, the rise of pediatric cancers, and the explosion of neurological disorders, these are not random coincidences. They are systemic consequences of our plastic addiction. We have created an environment where, for the first time in history, children may live shorter lives than their parents. This is not a hypothetical threat or a distant possibility. It is, in fact, an invisible catastrophe unfolding right now. The plastic tide knows no borders, infiltrating even the most remote corners of the planet. The atmosphere has become its primary carrier. Each year, up to 25 million metric tons of micro and nanoplastics travel thousands of kilometers through the air, snow and fog reaching as far as the Arctic and the high-altitude glaciers of the Alps. Water in all its forms is the leading distributor of plastic particles, from evaporation to precipitation. Oceans and seas play a critical role in this process. Each year, marine breezes deposit 136,000 metric tons of microplastics onto our coastlines. Meanwhile, open water bodies in densely populated cities have become hotspots of micro and nanoplastic emissions, with actual plastic concentrations in these waters estimated to be up to 90% higher than previously thought. Micro and nanoplastics are everywhere, and their pathways into our bodies are so numerous that avoiding exposure is virtually impossible. Let's take a closer look at how this invasion happens. Let's start with what we eat. Micro and nanoplastics have already become a part of our food supply. Scientists have discovered that fruits and vegetables, which we consider healthy, are literally infused with nanoplastics. These particles typically enter plants through their roots, carried by irrigation water and rainfall, then travel up the stems and accumulate in the leaves and the fruits. The highest concentrations of microplastics have been found in apples, pears, carrots, lettuce, and broccoli. Plastic levels in fruits are 2 to 3 times higher than in vegetables. This means that with every bite of an apple, we are swallowing thousands of invisible plastic particles that remain in our bodies. Seafood is another major source of micro and nanoplastics. Since microplastics saturate the entire ocean, they are ingested by fish and other marine organisms. Even one wash cycle of synthetic clothing releases up to 1.5 million microplastic particles into wastewater, which then flows into rivers and oceans. Fish, shrimp, mussels, all of it ends up back on our plates. A study from Newcastle University in Australia estimated that the average person consumes 250 grams of plastic per year, equivalent to 50 plastic bags annually. 5 grams of plastic per week, the weight of a credit card. But that's not all. Even something as simple as microwaving baby food in plastic containers releases over 2 billion nanoplastic and 4 million microplastic particles per square centimeter, which then seep into the food. We are not just feeding our children food, we are feeding them plastic. The water we drink is also contaminated. Micro and nanoplastics enter urban water sources through stormwater runoff, industrial discharges, and even rainfall, which captures plastic particles from the air. Research shows that 90% of tap water in the United States contains nanoplastics. Every drop of water in the global ocean is infused with micro and nanoplastics. As water evaporates, these plastic particles rise into the atmosphere and return to the Earth with precipitation. Over a period of 14 months, more than 1,000 metric tons of plastic particles fell with rain and snow across 11 national parks in the western United States, an amount equivalent to 120 million plastic bottles. We drink this water, cook with it, bathe in it, and with every sip, plastic penetrates deeper into our bodies. Now, let's talk about the air we breathe. As I mentioned earlier, micro and nanoplastics rise from the surface of open water bodies, including seas and oceans, are carried by the wind and become part of the atmosphere. Each year, marine breathers deposit 136,000 metric tons of microplastics onto coastlines, and we inhale them while walking along the beach or jogging by the sea. Studies show that during a 2-hour walk in a major city, an adult inhales up to 106,000 plastic particles, while children, due to their more active play, breathe in even more. Near open water bodies, including the beloved coastal breeze, a person inhales 10 times more nanoplastic particles. Even forests, once considered clean sanctuaries, have turned into plastic traps. The canopies of trees capture up to 420 trillion plastic particles per year. And due to poor ventilation under the forest canopy, air in forests can be more dangerous than even in the cities. While urban smog and vehicle emissions help deposit some airborne plastics in the city, in the forest, contrary-wise, they accumulate, triggering oxidative stress in trees and impairing photosynthesis. Now every breath in a pristine forest carries a hidden deadly toxin. Now I want to share with you an important and perhaps shocking truth about plastic, one that few people are aware of. Many assume that the greatest danger of plastic comes from its chemical composition, such as the toxic additives like phthalates and bisphenol A, which I have already mentioned. Yes, these substances are harmful, but their effects occur in microdoses, and humanity might have been able to manage them. However, there is a far more serious and largely unrecognized threat, one that only a handful of specialists are currently aware of: the ability of plastics, especially nanoplastics, to accumulate static electric charges. This overlooked property enables plastic particles to interact directly with internal structures of cells, including mitochondria, the power generators that produce energy in both adults and children. The static charges on nanoplastic particles actively disrupt these mitochondria, causing genetic malfunctions within cell nuclei and triggering mutations not only in developing embryos, but also in fully grown adults. This is not merely a chemical effect, it is a physical phenomenon. The static charge accumulated on plastic particles is the primary driver of their destructive impact. Nanoplastics, by holding these electrical charges, accelerate the very biological breakdowns I previously described, further deteriorating cellular health and overall human well-being. From a critical perspective, these static charges are the main factor behind brain degradation. They break down neurons, axons, and synapses, effectively dismantling the human brain from within. The same property of nanoplastic particles is now contributing to the formation of exceptionally large hailstones in the atmosphere, and their size will only continue to grow. The higher the concentration of nanoplastics in the air, the larger hailstones will become. Furthermore, the static charge on nanoplastic particles extends the lifespan of viruses that land on them. These particles act as energy reservoirs for viruses. Under normal circumstances, if viruses settle on surfaces without a host, they die within seconds. However, when viruses attach to nanoplastics carrying static electric charges, they can survive for 3 days or even longer, increasing their mutation rates and posing an even greater threat. Serious scientific research is currently being conducted in this field, and its findings could soon shake the world. It turns out we know far less about electricity than we once thought. All the devastating effects of nanoplastics, from mitochondrial and DNA damage to rising chronic diseases and congenital abnormalities in children, are compounded by the most terrifying reality. Nanoplastics cannot be removed from the body. Once inside, these microscopic particles penetrate deep into cells and remain there permanently, accumulating day after day and intensifying their toxic effects. If nanoplastics enter the body through food, some may be excreted through the digestive system. However, when inhaled, which is one of the primary routes of exposure, they settle in the lungs, enter the bloodstream, and reach the brain, where they remain forever. Our natural detoxification mechanisms, such as the liver and kidneys, are incapable of eliminating nanoplastics. The particles are too small and not recognized as foreign invaders, meaning the body does not attempt to expel them. Even if humanity were to completely stop using plastic today, the damage has already been done. The nanoplastics accumulated in our bodies and in the bodies of children as young as 3 years old and already sufficient to destroy us from within. Nanoplastics that have embedded themselves in cells continue to spread during cell division, fueling pathological processes such as cancer, metastasis, and neurodegeneration. This creates a vicious cycle from which humanity has no escape. Because nanoplastics cannot be removed, all the diseases described, that is to say, cardiovascular conditions, neurodegenerative disorders, cancer, reproductive issues, mental illnesses, and congenital abnormalities in children are now inevitable and will only continue to escalate. The first thought that may come to mind as a solution is to ban plastic entirely. But let me be direct, this is pointless. Plastic is too deeply embedded in our lives. It's in your refrigerator, your car, your clothing, your children's toys. Even if we were to immediately halt all plastic production, the sheer amount already present in oceans, seas, and rivers is enough to destroy humanity several times over. Even if we were to extract every large plastic fragment using the very finest nets, microplastics would continue breaking down into nanoplastics for decades to come, increasing their concentration thousands of times over. A ban is not the answer. One proposed solution is thermoplastic disposal for fuel production, including methods like pyrolysis and incineration. However, this is a highly hazardous process that leads to massive nanoplastic emissions into the atmosphere. Under high temperatures, plastics decompose into microscopic particles, including nanoplastics smaller than 100 nanometers. These particles are so minuscule that even the most advanced filtration systems cannot fully capture them, allowing them to escape into the air we breathe. When you smell burning plastic, it means that air is saturated with nanoplastics, which once inhaled penetrate deep into the body, including the brain, and accumulate in tissues. By inhaling nanoplastics released during incineration or pyrolysis, you are exposing yourself to irreversible health consequences. This is why burning plastic for fuel is not an option. The price of such fuel is not just for your health, it is your life. Safe plastic disposal is an extremely complex and costly process, requiring strict controls and specialized industrial facilities. A far more effective and environmentally responsible solution is plastic recycling. To achieve this, we must develop an economically viable plastic collection system, one that makes recycling profitable for all parties involved without driving up the cost of consumer goods. At this moment, you likely harbor one burning question: what can we do? If nanoplastics are impossible to remove from the organism once they are present within our cells, and even within the brain cells of our children, how can we protect ourselves from further poisoning? I must candidly state that, as of today, no solutions exist. How can we eliminate nanoplastics from our bodies, you ask? Personally, I do not know the answer, and no one currently possesses this extremely valuable knowledge. But while countless scientists are working to find one, we can at least reduce the number of plastic nanoparticles entering our bodies and those of our children. This will require changing our lifestyles, habits, and even desires. You ask, how to protect ourselves? Well, you are intelligent people. Think for yourselves. Once nanoplastics have entered the body, they cannot be expelled. And the primary route of entry is through respiration. The paradox of our rapidly changing world is that what once restored our health now robs it from us. Megacities, which were previously deemed harmful due to their noise and emissions, have become significantly safer than a walk in the fresh air of a forest. Forests are now saturated with nanoplastics, and even leisure time by the coast can turn into a catastrophe due to the presence of nanoplastics. I remind you that after inhalation, they reach your brain in just 2 hours. The only question is the quantity that will infiltrate your brain, disrupting interneural connections and irrevocably destroying your neurons. Therefore, seek out places for yourself and your children where the air is cleaner, where the concentration of nanoplastics is minimal, and avoid areas with high levels of micro and nanoplastic pollution. While scientists search for answers, you can protect yourself and your loved ones by minimizing contact with this threat where it is within your control. Think and act. This is your chance. Right now, I am telling you the unfiltered truth. Think while you still can. Humanity's cognitive abilities are declining, and this is not a joke. It is nanoplastics in our brains. You already notice it in yourself and in your loved ones. And with each passing year, it will only get worse. Right now, humanity is powerless against nanoplastics. We cannot remove them from our cells or our brains, where they destroy everything that makes us human. But we, the scientists, are not giving up. We are fighting for you, for your children, for our future. Believe me, we are doing everything in our power. No, we do not have a solution yet, but this is a matter of physics and chemistry, and that means a solution does exist. We just haven't found it yet. Right now, the most critical thing you can do is to preserve your health, your life, and the lives of your children until we do find an answer. Protect yourselves. Life is worth fighting for.